Hey guys, I wanted to make a video about developing one's intuition. And I guess I'm going to go right into it. So I want to mention a few things before going more into some of the specifics. The first thing, which is some sort of disclaimer, is that when it comes to intuition, you gotta use your discernment. You gotta learn to tap into it. And your discernment is one of those things who no one else other than you will be able to actually, develop, um, because it's a very individual thing, right? Your discernment, it's a very individual thing. Your life context, your life situation, the resources that that you have access to, the people that you have access to, the opportunities you have access to are very different than the ones that another person may have, right? So that's why it's very important for you to tap into your own discernment when it comes to taking action, right? Which is another important part, actually, that I'm going to mention. For you to develop or to continue the path of you developing this intuition, it's two things are very important, right? Which is awareness, the first one, and the second one is action. You need both. You need both things to develop your intuition. Otherwise, you'll get stuck. You'll get, if you want to keep on working on it and advancing and just improving, your ability to tap into that intuition, you really gotta take in consideration both things, right? You have to pay attention. You have to be aware of things, which is things are that I'm about to explain, right? But you have to really, really pay attention. You have to really, you know, well, yeah, just pay attention to your awareness and the quality of your awareness. That's very important. And the other thing, it's action. You gotta take action. It's not enough by you just being aware of things, because that's just like the first half of the work. The second half of the work is you taking action, right? So the awareness is for you to be able to notice information. It's what I'm gonna say, right? It's just like the things that I'm about to explain, mention, right? You gotta use as information. You gotta use them as information to take action. And for this, okay, you gotta have in consideration that you also must develop a balance, not only between awareness and action, but also between the understanding and the interpretation of symbolism and rationality. So you gotta have both, right? You cannot just stick with one. You gotta really, really learn to, again, through your discernment, right, to interpret and to know which actions are aligned with whatever your intuition is trying to communicate or to tell you, right? And so, well, yeah. What do I mean when I say symbolism? Well, that a lot of this like intuitive work that you gotta do is highly symbolic, will be highly symbolic. If maybe you are already, you know, maybe you already know a little bit about it, I don't know. But it's a very symbolic thing, right? What do I mean? That a lot of things you'll have to interpret by your own lenses and the things that it tells you specifically and not anyone else, right? And like this interpretation of symbolism is a very individual thing. Not everybody's going to interpret the same things in the same way. So you really gotta learn to, understand how to interpret things from a different lenses other than rationality. But that doesn't mean you gotta, delete rationality off your life. It's also very important for you to have, that into consideration more than anything when it comes to your actions, right? So symbolism more than anything for you to be able to understand, or to, what your intuition is trying to tell you, and rationality when it comes to you taking action about it, right? So sometimes you may have nudges that will be that you'll question yourself, right? So again, that's why it's very important for you to really use your discernment, your individual discernment, but yeah, having said that, I'm going to go right into the different ways that you can, the different things that you'll have to pay attention to if you want to develop this intuition that, that everybody really has the ability to tap into, but it's just that we are not taught how to do that, right? So I'm going to start with thoughts. Just communication will, your intuition will communicate with you through thoughts. It's one of the forms it will communicate as, as thoughts. So when it comes to thoughts, it may be a song, it may be a song that you're just listening in your mind, that just comes to your mind, that there's no specific reason for you, just remembering a particular song other than that it just came to your mind and you remembered it. And, I always suggest people that when songs come into their minds, I suggest them to research, to look up the lyrics. Just look up the lyrics for that song, right? Or if the song doesn't have any lyrics, just pay attention to the music itself, right? How does it make you feel? What kind of emotions is it transmitting to you? Just pay attention to it and, try to see what is that trying to communicate to you, right? Another way that intuition communicates through emotions is through ideas. You may have, ideas may come to you. And by the way, a lot of these things oftentimes tend to be very persistent, like very persistent thoughts. And when something is very persistent, I would recommend to you to pay even more attention to it, because if it's repeating in your head, very constantly, it's for a reason. And sometimes some things may not be as constant. Some thoughts may not be as constant. Those are worth paying attention to as well. But regardless, the ones that repeat the most are the ones that I would encourage you to just be more aware and more mindful of. Okay, I'm gonna continue. So I was talking about ideas, right? So when you have an idea to do something, or to plan something, or to develop something, a lot of times those ideas, require us to go out of our comfort zone, and it can be uncomfortable, and it can be, a little bit, it can cause some like internal tension, right? But I would tell you to just go for it. I mean, it's easier said than done, and I'm aware of that. But just try to calm yourself down and really try to think about it. When an idea comes to you, is it something that you're interested in working through? Is it something that you actually would like to make into a reality? Maybe an idea for a project, for a business, right? Is it something that you actually feel like nudged to do, and it feels compelling to do? Then you should by all means look into it. Just look into it. What can you do about it? And you don't have to have the full project finished right away. I mean, if you can do that, that's great, right? But if you can't do that due to the scope of the idea, right? Just make little advancements into it, like every day or every time that you have free time, that you just gotta make that um, space in your agenda, to develop these things. You do. Um, but yeah, I mean, just develop things little by little. You don't have to have everything figured out right away. And even those ideas may take you through different phases where sometimes they will shift form, as you work along. And they may not, at the end of the day, they may not look like you envisioned them at first, right? But that's also part of the journey. You're not supposed to hold on to a very specific idea of how is it going to turn out. Part of it is just acting on it, doing, taking the steps, and, along the way, you start refining and you start changing, the things that need to be changed, and you start maybe looking up, maybe looking, looking onto other things that may be able to help in that idea that you didn't consider before, or the development of these ideas will change with time, or it may change, it may not. I don't know. It's you know each one of us has a very particular set of well, not a particular set, but each one of us has different nudges and different ideas that come to us to act on, and not all of them will look alike. Sometimes they will be very different, from person to person. Okay, when it comes to thoughts, other kinds of thoughts that you may encounter, are so by the way, like I was talking about particular ideas, but sometimes you may have, also like repeating thoughts about taking just very specific, very particular actions, not so abstract as an idea, or as something that has to be fully formed, in time, but more of a concrete action that like your thoughts are telling you to do. Like I guess the easiest, or the thing that comes easiest to me is just like that example of going to the doctor, like just going to your doctor's appointment, or just going to the doctor whenever you don't feel very well, right? Instead of just ignoring the symptoms, and instead of just doing nothing about it, and instead of just waiting to see what happens, I guess, it has happened to most of us, right? That we know that we gotta go to the doctor, to check up on whatever we're experiencing, whatever we're feeling, and sometimes we just don't do that. We just don't do it. We just take some medication that covers the symptom, but it doesn't actually, fixes anything. You know, uh, so it's just one example, right? But what I mean is that sometimes you're gonna have like very concrete uh, actions that your mind is telling you to do, right? So go to this place, or do this thing, or talk to this person, right? Do that. Do that. I know that sometimes, like again, this inner resistance, uh, it's difficult sometimes to overcome. It is. But you'll notice that the more you act on these things, the more you develop this intuition and you act on it, it'll become easier with time. In time, it'll become just way, way, way easier. So it's part of the learning curve, I guess, right? But yeah, like just in general, pay attention to your thoughts. What are they telling you? Are they telling you to do something specific? Either telling you to look up into something, maybe some topic, maybe some book, or maybe even some movie. Like just pay attention to it, right? Like what kind of things are coming to your mind? What kind of actions, ideas, or other references, are coming to your mind. Look into that, or if maybe you happen, some word that you're not familiar with comes to your mind, do a Google search. What does that mean? What does this word mean? Like sometimes that happens. Some random words may show up and we're just not familiar with them. But just look into that. Look into that. It's just how our communication, how our intuition tries to communicate with us through our thoughts, through, giving us those nudges to do certain things and to look into certain things and to, just act and pay attention to those things, and then using you pay attention to it, then you use your discernment, and then you act on it, right? So that's the sequence. Another form of that our intuition communicates with us, it's through physical sensations, body sensations, physical sensations, just in general, right? So I guess this one's a little bit hard for me to describe because I've noticed that physical sensations will show up differently as well in different people. So not everybody experiences like the same kind of sensations or the same quality of sensations or the same characteristics when it comes to physical sensations. But physical sensations are very important for you to pay attention to as well. Pay attention to how does saying something makes you feel? How does doing something makes you feel? And I don't only mean like emotionally, I mean actually physically. What kind of physical sensations do certain things or even people, what kind of physical sensations do certain people, just trigger on you, right? Or trigger in you. Pay attention to it, right? Like, how does it feel? Does it feel uncomfortable? Does it feel like pressure? Does it feel good? Does it not feel good? And so pay attention to those things. Like, for example, in your chest, pay attention to your chest. When you're about to make a decision or when you're acting on some decision, pay attention if perhaps there's something, that you may be feeling in your chest. Is there pressure there? Sometimes there's going to be good pressure, that's pushing us to do something that's out of our comfort zone. And that pressure is good, right? Because it can get us closer to do things, that we wouldn't do otherwise, and that may bring us actually positive results or positive benefits, down the road. But there are also times when you may feel very uncomfortable pressure, that it's just feels wrong. You're gonna realize the difference. It just feels wrong. It feels off. It feels bad. That's also trying to tell you something. Like the typical sensation, that okay, you may be walking in the street at night for whatever reason. You're alone at night, right? And like your body is telling you not to go through a certain street. That's what I mean. Just pay attention to that. What is your body telling you? If your body's telling you not to go through that street, don't go through that street. Like look for another another path that may seem safer, right? So that's an example, right? But this applies to all kinds of situations. So pay attention to that, to your chest. Pay attention also to chills that you may have, and there are also good chills and bad chills as well. And like I said, when you experience them, you're gonna realize, you're gonna know. But chills, pay attention to it, like in your whole body, like not just in a specific area, not just in your arms, like chills in your, you may feel chills all around your body, those chills are also trying to tell you something. They may be trying to push you to do something, or they may be trying to hold you back from doing something that may be harmful, or that may take you to negative consequences. So pay attention to those things as well, you know, and just there may be other kinds of variations when it comes to micro sensations in your body. Just pay attention to those micro sensations, you know. There are a lot of things that I honestly, it's hard for me to kind of explain because it's just it's difficult. It's difficult. I just don't have the words or don't have the vocabulary to be as specific when it comes to all kinds of physical sensations that I've experienced, right? And like I said, they vary from person to person. So, but pay attention to those micro sensations that you may be feeling, right? Uh, just pay attention. By the way, one thing that's going to be very helpful for you to develop this physical awareness, you know, how your body is trying to communicate with you, like how your intuition is trying to communicate through your body, you know. One thing that will be very, very helpful, well, a couple of things. It's just one is breath work. Breath work, and the other thing is meditation, right? I know that most people don't like to hear that. Most people just are like, meditation, breath work, that doesn't work, you know. I've encountered people telling me that so many times, you know, that doesn't work. And I used to be one of those. Honestly, I used to be one of those people who thought that breath work and meditation didn't work. It does work, you guys. It's just that it requires practice. It's not as easy, you know, at first. At first, eventually it becomes very natural. It becomes like very normal for you to just tune into it, and you know, and your body will react accordingly very easily. But at first, when you're not used to that, you gotta practice. You just gotta practice. You know, you gotta put yourself through that, even if it's a little uncomfortable at first. But the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Like any other thing, like learning any other thing, like learning any other skill, you just gotta practice and do and do and do and repeat and repeat and repeat, and eventually it will become very natural for you to do. But I would recommend you to do that breath work and meditation. That will help you to like balance your nervous system, to stabilize your nervous system, and it'll be easier for you in stillness to you know, to really, it'll make it easier for you to notice those physical sensations through breath work and meditation and stillness, right? Which through breath work, and a lot of breath work and meditation techniques require you to be still. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And this stillness will help you a lot, you know, and just being able to notice those micro sensations more easily. So yeah, I guess that's another way your intuition, no, not I guess, I know that's another way your intuition communicates with you. And then the final third way, which, I mean, this is not a comprehensive list or anything, you know, I'm just trying to tell you, you know, like the things that I've noticed, the things that I've realized, what I've learned through tapping into my own intuition, through talking to other people, and even through research, you know, like independent research that I do. You know, I really, really like researching stuff. I'm a very curious person. So, so I'm telling you, you know, in what I've learned through my intellectual and experience, but also my how do you say? Well, yeah, like first person experience as well. It's just not merely intellectual, but you know, I've also experienced that, you know, firsthand. The third way that your intuition, this one's a little bit crazy, and I don't know how many people have experienced this, right? But to the ones that have experienced this, you'll know what I mean. You'll know what I mean. I know it's very uncommon, you know, for people to talk about this, but it's very interesting, right? And I don't know. To me, this one is like one of the most exciting to me. Well, one of the most exciting ways that your intuition communicates with you, and it's actually not only your intuition, right? It's just like, okay, so bear with me. I don't know if you ever heard this theory or this idea. I should say it's not a theory. I don't think so. But this idea that even a lot of like spiritual traditions and like mystical traditions have had, you know, since always, even since prehistory. It's nothing new, right? It's culture since prehistory, all through our own modern times, modern humans, all of us, throughout the history of humankind, and more than anything, it has been like taught in spiritual and mystical traditions, is that we all are interconnected. Or even, I mean, maybe, I don't know, if you have used shrooms, you may, like psilocybin shrooms. Some people also, talk about experiencing this. I actually have experienced that myself too. This just feeling, this awareness. It's hard to explain. It's a very, like shroom trips are very surreal. So they're very hard to explain. But it's like this awareness that you tap into, through the shrooms that help you realize and notice and learn that all of us are interconnected. And not only human beings, but all living creatures, and not only all living creatures, but all things. All things are in existence, right? And so I'm also talking, about how, well, this entails several things, that each one of us affects each other, or affects the whole, I should say, right? In more obvious or not less obvious, or less obvious ways, right? But we all are affecting each other. And most people maybe don't even realize this, right? But even those that don't realize are being affected constantly by, like external stimuli and other people and other situations, external situations. So people are not only affected by their inner world, but they are also affected by what's happening outside of them, around them. And so it's just like, we're impacting each other all the time. Sometimes directly, maybe when we have a conversation with someone, face to face, and that conversation may be impactful, or sometimes it may be through indirect means, right? So you may not be talking to that person directly, but, somehow, that person was able to be impacted by your decisions, or by how you show up, in the world. You never know. You never know. But anyway, that's not the point. I'm just trying to preface what I'm about to explain, right? Like, just we have to take in consideration that we all are interconnected. Everything is interconnected, right? And so, okay. Maybe some of you have experienced this. I don't know. Like, I've realized it's not very common, but it's another way that this interconnectedness and your intuition like work together to communicate with you. So maybe you've heard of the word synchronicities, right? What are synchronicities? Are meaningful coincidences. That's how I've seen that people describe them, synchronicities, as being meaningful coincidences that they're hard to explain, like they're very meaningful, that it's just hard to understand, like how did this happen, like how is it possible that something like this is as choreographed, as it may feel as if it's like the universe talking just to you. It's a very beautiful experience, but also it can be a little bit, like, I mean, it's very unusual, right? It's well, until you experience that. But before, it's usually not something that most people are aware of. Even if it happens, they don't realize, they don't read things uh, like that deeply. They don't read events that deeply, And so we tend to assume that coincidences are just that, coincidences. Well, you know, I've gone through so many experiences that I don't call them coincidences anymore. I call them synchronicities. Just the word I have adopted. I just don't call Like to me, like the way I perceive things, because of my experiences, it's just that there's no way for me that I can believe that coincidences are a thing. They're not a thing. They don't exist. They're synchronicities. They're deliberate. Even if they don't seem deliberate, they are deliberate. Um, I mean, and here I'm not gonna get too much into discussing, the deliberateness of it. A lot of you may have different beliefs or ideas or thoughts, or even, you don't necessarily have to be into like spirituality or anything. A lot of these things you may try to explain through physics or quantum physics, right? Or through psychology, even. Um, so you don't have to be married to any one particular tradition or point of view to try to make sense of this, right? But synchronicities, you know, uh, synchronicities or these meaningful coincidences, uh, they communicate with us as well, right? It's like this joint communication between the universe and ourselves, and our intuition. So, well, the universe and ourselves, and we learn to notice those things and process those things, and integrate those things through our intuition and our discernment, and when synchronicities become a part of your life, like a very constant part of your life, it becomes normal. It becomes a normal thing. You see them all the time, everywhere. And what do I mean with synchronicities? Maybe you will see repeated numbers, right? Maybe you will see maybe one book that you feel drawn to, and suddenly you start seeing it everywhere, right? Like you go to one bookstore and then you see the book, right? Like right there. You just when like in a very obvious place where you don't have to look for it. It's just there, in a very obvious place. And then you go to another bookstore and then it's there. Or then you go to just somewhere else, that's not even a bookstore, and then again you see a picture of the book. Then you go online and you see the picture of the book. And it's kind of crazy because I'm not even referring to like popular books, or I've experienced this with all kinds of like obscure, even out of print books, or very just not popular or not mainstream books that I've experienced this with. It's kind of crazy. Another thing that maybe, it's even music as well. Like I was saying, sometimes music just comes into your mind and it'll give you, it's just like your intuition communicating with you. But sometimes you're gonna listen to songs out there in the street, or out there in other places. Like you're just walking down the street and maybe someone in their car is playing a song that just you needed in that specific moment, that communicates something to you that you needed to hear in that specific moment. Or not even a car, or maybe you're going, I don't know, maybe you go out to an event and I don't know, there's some music group there that's performing, and maybe they perform songs that just really speak to you and speak to your soul, right? Like you really needed them at that moment. But just overall, music, or that you hear someone else playing, just pay attention to the lyrics. Pay attention to them. You'll notice, that these songs, really try to communicate things that help you out whenever you need them the most. It's kind of crazy, like I said, the synchronicity, like the whole orchestration of how many events, can converge just to give you specific symbolic meaning that wants to be communicated, right, to you. And not only that, really it comes down to all kinds of synchronicities, all kinds of, when you see repeated patterns, or when you see the right thing happening at the right time, or sometimes it will feel like it's not the right thing, but sometimes you got to realize that sometimes this synchronicities and this, will also occur, so we are aware that we shouldn't do something, or we shouldn't make a decision maybe just in that specific moment, and so these events that happen, like, or even rain. I know it sounds kind of crazy, right? But you're gonna do something that maybe you're questioning, and you're like, I don't know if I should do it, or if I shouldn't do it. and you question that, and maybe you shouldn't do it. Maybe if you do it, I don't know, something bad's gonna happen, right? Like maybe your intuition is trying to tell you not to do it out of precaution, right? And out of caution. And so it may happen like, okay, like I'm ready to go out. And then as soon as you step out the door, it starts raining, right? You know what? These kinds of things, I mean, when I talk about synchronicity, it's just not music. It's just also events, that happen, or even animals. Maybe you have experienced things where, again, you're out there and just some animal approaches you, again, or even like animal sounds or bird sounds. Like when you're questioning something and then suddenly it's just like there's this animal, that just starts making sounds at the right time, again, as if it's choreographed. It's kind of crazy. Or even people, which is actually the craziest. To me, it's actually the most obvious, and at the same time, the most amazing way that synchronicities communicate through people. Sometimes talking with others, you'll notice that they will tell you things that you needed to hear, or that were helpful for you to hear, and they are not even going to be aware that they were speaking to a part of you that really needed that. They may not even be aware of that, but but they communicate things to you that just make a very particular sense to you. Like, again, like as if the universe is trying to communicate with you through all other people. And so that happens too. Sometimes you're gonna need something, or you're gonna need help, or you're just gonna need resources, and the right resources will come through other people, right? Just when you needed them the most and you least expected, they show up. Suddenly someone shows up, right? And I've also experienced that, right? Like I don't know, I'm out there in the street and I'm like, oh my god, it's so hot out there. I forgot my water bottle. I'm having such a hard time, with the weather. And suddenly, a guy shows up, like promoting whatever refreshing drink, and just gives me a bottle, just for free. That has happened to me. Like, it's a real story. It's just like, what? But that's just like one example. It has happened so many times when the right people and the right resources have showed up to me in the right moment. And I guess that here's when I give a little bit more of a context when it comes to you, like, again, following that intuition and developing that intuition and tapping into it, and just like building a stronger relationship with your intuition. All of these things will happen, like in no particular order, in no particular sequence, right? You got to get comfortable with not knowing things, with uncertainty. It's part of it. It's part of it. Part of following your intuition is just being or getting comfortable with uncertainty. And sometimes it'll be hard. Sometimes it'll be difficult. But man, is it worth it? It'll take you to situations, to places, to people, to experiences, to opportunities that you never thought were even possible for you to experience. So that's why it's very important, right, for you to tap into it, into your intuition, because a lot of it's just a sequence of events that you cannot predict, and so tapping into the different forms that this intuition communicates with you, takes you to very interesting places and to take you to very interesting experiences. And so, yeah, I would encourage you to really pay attention to it, to look into it. If you're not convinced by something I've said, look into it. Maybe do a quick research. See how other people experience these things, right? It'll help you out as well. not only with my video, but maybe look into other people and their own experiences with intuition and with synchronicities. You know, you'll realize there's more people than you expect experiencing these kinds of stuff. But it happens when you really tap into it, when you really start paying attention, and when you start to really be aware and you start to really act on those nudges, right? That your intuition or the universe or God, if you believe in God, you know, is trying to communicate to you. Yeah, I don't know. It's a very complex topic, but I kind of wanted to make something that, you know, more or less would summarize um, the things I've noticed, the things I've realized, and, you know, like very concrete things that I could point out to you. So maybe it'll be helpful for you to, you know, tap into it, tap into your intuition, into your own intuition, and yeah, I guess that was it for now. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, any comments, or if you want to contribute anything for other people to read, please do so in the comment section. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.